Divided, the North and South were equally autocratic, but the United States supported the South because the North was communist. South Korea started off with a corrupt government at first, but South Korea received a lot of help from the United States and Japan. South Korea when they divided Korea up, South Korea got the worst farmland. So the South Koreans began to industrialize. The Japanese moved in and convinced them, taught them how to make automobiles, motorcycles. The Hyundai is a copy of the Japanese Honda, and a pretty good car. The Kia was a second-rate car until Hyundai bought them out. Now again, if you've heard in 1997, Hyundai bought Kia out and greatly improved the quality of the Kia. But South Korea is industrialized. Unfortunately, most of the land is owned by large landowners. Wait a minute, I'll take that back. Large landowners were required to sell their land at low prices to their tenants, so that the landowners were allowed to keep 7 acres, but the rest of their land they had to sell to the tenants at low prices. Koreans save a higher percentage of their income than most other people. Like I mentioned, this Asian girl working at our factory, working with our wire harnesses, was able to save money, but because she and about 14 other Korean people bunched together in one house. And they were able to save money because they didn't have to pay as much for rent or utilities as other people do. North Korea's economy has collapsed. A lot of North Koreans try to flee south. Most of them were killed doing so. South Korea has sometimes given aid to North Korea. It has not improved relations. Okay, now your book winds up saying the economy of North Korea is slowly improving, but keep in mind this book was written about 4 or 5 years ago. Korea made news yesterday. You may be aware. I heard it.
They shot 2 missiles?
They shot another missile. Yeah. Shot another missile, and maybe 2 of them. The missile was recorded by South Korea and by Japan and by the United States. They fired off another missile. And one of these days, one of these missiles is going to hit something. All right. Taiwan, it was a small island. Now, Taiwan was a nation that was formed after Chiang Kai-shek fled the country. He went to the island of Formosa, and this is called and formed the nation of Taiwan. And because it was small, they could not make a living by farming so much, so they started to industrialize. They had a lot of encouragement and help from the United States in that regard. They also had a lot of help from Japan. And they encouraged their people to invest in American markets, foreign investment, foreign savings. But industry is privatized. That is, the government does not own the industry. Because they live so close to mainland China, and because mainland China continues to threaten them, the people of Taiwan are highly motivated to do well. And folk, if Red China actually ever invaded Taiwan, nobody knows what would happen. Would the United States move in with its army like we at one time promised we would? Or would we just simply allow Taiwan to be taken over? Would the Taiwanese be strong enough to resist the Chinese? Since this book was written, China has created a bunch of artificial islands by finding shallow parts in the sea and dumping a bunch of dirt and rock and whatever in those shallow parts to create artificial islands. And these islands are big enough to hold an airport, a runway, and housed some people and housed soldiers. And a lot of persons are claiming, hey, these islands are built in international waters and the Chinese have no right to them. But anyway, this is all going on in that part of the world right now. Singapore, I've mentioned that. Singapore was once a part of a British crown colony, part of the British Empire, known as one of the Little Tigers. Great Britain gave them their independence. Singapore started off with democracy and it failed. Crime became rampant. People were afraid to walk the streets. Liu Yan, Lee Kuan Yew, I mean, I've heard his name pronounced different ways, but anyway, Lee Kuan took over the government. He encouraged hard work, thrift, and cleanliness. He emphasized obedience to authority. And he cleaned up the place. I mentioned that he practiced canings. He killed a few people along the way, but they were all criminals, so persons who had done some deed that made him worthy, deserving of the death penalty, if you believe in the death penalty at all. He used it judiciously. The bad people in Singapore did either one of two things, either changed their ways or left. Now, also, he outlawed pornography. Oh, you might, whatever you view about the issue of pornography, it is known that when it comes into a certain area, the quality of life goes way down, unemployment increases. And the neighborhoods that allow it to become run down, broken up. A lot of garbage on the lawns, a lot of trash on the lawns, and whatever. That's one of the side effects of pornography. Again, believe what you will. But Singapore outlawed it. And I guess their moral fiber is higher for it. In our country, it's a free speech issue. And free speech is becoming a hot issue because for the most part we don't have much free speech left. Hong Kong. Now again, I keep emphasizing, this book was written before the latest turmoil in Hong Kong. Hong Kong was developed in an unrestrained free capitalism. The British took Hong Kong in 1898 and they got a 99-year lease on it. And we gave them back. Now, when I was in school in the 1960s, 1970s, 1997 seemed like a long time off, but I was aware that the British had promised that China would get Hong Kong back in 1997. Well, 1997 came, and the British gave Hong Kong back. But the British made the Chinese promise that Hong Kong would be allowed to keep its capitalism, would be allowed to keep its free markets and private industries. Fine and dandy. But then after many, many years, the Chinese are wanting to communize or whatever, make Hong Kong like the rest of China and restrict the capitalism, and the people of Hong Kong are rebelling. Now this is going on right now. This is not in your book, but it's going on right now. And it's making world news, just like I believe yesterday I saw on MSN where they had used tear gas to break up a riot. The government of China is becoming really, really repressive. And nobody knows what the outcome will be. Again, I might get in my car after the class, turn the radio on, and there'll be more news about Hong Kong. Highly likely, in fact. And it'll probably be bad news. 3 things that your book mentions that has helped all these Southeast Asian countries. Self-sacrifice, hard work, and have high family values. In other words, by family values, that means a man and a woman marry and they stay faithful to each other all their lives. Adultery is not commonplace. Divorce is uncommon. This is true of a lot of your Asian countries. Strong family values, self-sacrifice, hard work. And I have met and talked to a lot of divorcees in my time, and most of the time when you divorce, you wind up living a much lower standard of living than you had when you were together. And the courts, you never know what the courts are going to do in a divorce case. And I had a cousin who thought, well, okay, he was unfaithful to his wife. She had a reason to divorce him. But he thought, well, I'll just give her a little bit of money and she can leave. No, she cleaned his plow, if you know what I mean. She took everything he had and left him out in the street. He was able to pick himself back up, marry again, but the next wife he married, he stayed married to her till the day he died. He learned his lesson. And his father, my uncle, said once, I tell you, them 40 and 50-year-old young'uns are going to have to start learning how to take care of themselves. Before he had to bail almost every one of his 40 and 50-year-old children out of their marriage mess that they got themselves into. Dysfunctional. But anyway, something else I want to say about divorce. A lot of your divorcees are divorce repeaters. So if you marry someone who's already been divorced twice, you're asking for it. Once, I mean, a person might have made a mistake one time, but if a person makes a mistake 2 times, they're going to probably likely repeat it. And they'll tell you that, oh, it was his fault, it was her fault. No, if they'd been divorced over and over again, it's their own fault. These nations have chosen autocracy over democracy, and again, most of you heard the speech I made last class. A rule by one, in the long run, I think is better than a rule of the common people. Democracy will last for a while, but ultimately in the long run it doesn't work. These people, they started off with a Western-style democracy and found out it didn't work for them, and they had to go back to authoritarianism, and that worked, and everybody is happier. Okay. The only thing left, Australia now gets a lot of its immigrants from the Far East, from East Asia. New Zealand, the only thing I want to remember about New Zealand, I mean, I've already mentioned New Zealand doesn't need to build a wall. But New Zealand is not like the nuclear testing that goes on in the Pacific, where who tests their nuclear weapons? France did, the United States once did. And a lot of the above ground testing has been stopped, thanks to radioactive fallout fears. So most of the nuclear testing that's done by the nations these days is done underground. Okay, with that, folk, we'll spend the rest of the time in review. Okay. Starting off, what is the primary religion of Pakistan? For India, it's Hinduism. For Pakistan, it's Islam. Thank you, Islam. Primary religion of Pakistan is Islam. Now, India is constantly facing a threat of war with one of its neighbors, namely Pakistan. Yeah, India and Pakistan have been at each other's throats for a long time. Here's is it true or false? The United States has the highest level of academic achievement in the world.
False.
Extremely false. I was talking to one of your classmates about that issue before class. Okay. Now, if you see the word philosophy Philo. What does this refer to? It's a word that's only used in one context.
The philosophy in France.
Say that?
The philosophy in France.
Yeah, it's a French word, thank you. It's only used in reference to the Enlightenment philosophers, which were mostly French. But basically it's European philosophers living in the 1700s, maybe the late 1600s also, but it's only used in context with those. It involves men like Voltaire, Diderot, and Locke, Rousseau, Montesquieu, those men. All right. I don't emphasize dates much, but I think you ought to know this one. When did World War I begin and end? Do any of you remember? 19 to 19. 1914 to 18. Now, 1941 to 45, that was when the United States was in World War II. Now, the World War II actually began in Europe in 1939. The United States got involved in 1941, late in 1941. But 1941, 41, again, I think these are dates you really should know. World War I, 1914 to 1918. Let's see. Oh yes, here's one. When a nation is beset by economic hard times, what do the leaders of most nations tend to do to boost their economies?
Borrow money.
What's that?
Borrow money.
Excellent, excellent. Yes, unfortunately. They would try to cut taxes, cut interest rates, and increase public works and get themselves deeper and deeper in debt. And supposedly then they tell themselves, well, when the recession is over, we'll pay back the debt. Except for one thing, the recession will eventually end and the debt is never paid back. Interest rates, again, folk, interest rates are ridiculously low these days. All in an attempt to boost the economy and discourage savings, for one thing. All right. In France, before the French Revolution, there were 3 estates. The second estate was the king and the nobles. The third estate was the commoners. Then what was the first estate? Clergy. I think, yeah, the clergy. Now, here's this word I might not have mentioned. Well, there was a child rearing expert by the name of Dr. Spock. Dr. Spock, he wrote a book on child rearing that actually was still widely read. And when my first child was born in 1990, the nurse said, Dr. Spock really has the best plan for rearing up babies. The idea of getting a baby to sleep at night rather than stay awake in the daytime, and establish feeding habits you can live with, and get them on a regular feeding and sleeping cycle. All this, but then Dr. Spock's name became associated with permissiveness. In other words, allow the child to do his own thing. Now, Dr. Spock never actually said this, but some of his followers did. If a child throws a temper tantrum and breaks the kitchen table in a tantrum, what you all ought to do then is just spread out a tablecloth on the floor and all of you eat on the floor until the child learns that, hey, throwing a temper tantrum is not a good idea. Once the child has matured past that stage, then you can replace the table and everybody be happy. Now, Dr. Spock himself did not actually go that far, but I say some of his followers did. Permissiveness eventually is now blamed for leading to the drug culture letting kids do their own thing, and let the kids have sex anytime they want to, anytime they choose. In other words, just utter total permissiveness. And now, Dr. Spock had 5 sons. They all 5 grew up to say, after he died, they said he was a lousy father. So the man who was an expert on child rearing, his children did not like his style of parenting. All right. When you see the name Trotsky, Trotsky, where did he live? What did he do? It's a person. Leon Trotsky. Russia, yes, Russia. He was a communist. He was a Russian, he was a communist. And eventually, as was a case of so many communists, he was brushed aside. All right, we're going all the way back. Chapter 15, Martin Luther. What do you remember him for?
Lutheranism.
What's that?
Lutheranism.
Lutheranism.
Building up
Reformed.
against the church.
He started the Lutheran Church
And then faces.
that emphasized justification by faith,
Yeah.
and emphasized, which was going back to what Paul kept writing about in the New Testament, justification by faith. Hopefully all of you know this. We associate the name Charles Darwin with evolution. Charles Darwin, evolution. Okay, who do we associate with relativity?
Yeah.
Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein. Psychoanalysis. Who got us started on the trip with some psychoanalysis? Sigmund Freud. Seems like only one of you knows all the answers. All right. Here are some of the dates I want to remember. I'll tell you what. Let's go over this after the break. Be back, folk, at about 12 noon. I forgot to get an eraser.